So in this video, we're going to make a sample app that shows how to use a collection view controller. And I think I'll just go ahead and put that in a tabbed application, just so that we have a little bit more flexibility. And I think that a lot of you may want tab bars in your apps. So I'm going to choose a tabbed application. I'm going to click Next. And this sort of would connect to MealWheel. So let's imagine that we have a list of restaurants and their logo. Okay, so we want to see a series of little boxes that are a restaurant name and the logo for that restaurant. Yeah? It reminds us a little bit of MealWheel, right? But it's not going to be a wheel, it's just a grid. So I'll call this, oh, I like that, meal grid. And I'm not going to include unit test or UI test because we're not going to write that and we don't need it for this sample.
So you no UI tests.
Right. I think UI tests are a new thing in Xcode 7, and we're not going to be that rigorous about.
My favorite part about Xcode 7 is that.
Okay, this is what I'd like to do first. I'd like to go into my storyboard and just do some cleanup. And I am going to delete both of these view controllers. So there's a tab bar controller that will contain it, and I'm going to start by putting one view in here. There's a special kind of view controller called a collection view controller. And which you can see, it kind of looks like a grid. And I would like to put this collection view controller inside the first tab, the only tab. So I will control drag from the tab bar to this collection view controller, and I will add it to the view controllers relationship, just the array of view controllers that are in the tab bar. And because this bothers me, I am going to rename this. So instead of calling it item, let's call it restaurants. Neither. I did view controllers. And so a collection view is sort of like a grid, and every piece of the grid is called a cell, and we're going to see how we are going to implement some protocols so that the controller, which is the actual, the controller, the code, is going to answer some questions and handle some events to push the data, to provide the data to the view, the collection view, and to handle events for the view. In order to do this, I want to get rid of the first and second view controllers. I'm not using those at all, so I'm going to go ahead and clean those out. I will move them to the trash because I want them to be entirely away.
Did you leave source control on?
What?
Did you leave the source control on when you made the
Yes. But that's either way is fine on source control. We're probably not going to keep a repo. What I need to do, though, is I need to create a new class that is a subclass of UICollectionViewController that will handle the code. And by being a subclass, then I'll get a lot of functionality for free. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to right-click and say New File. And I want to make sure I'm in iOS under Source and do Cocoa Touch class. Next. And I want to choose from this list the UICollectionViewController as the subclass. And let's call this a restaurant collection view controller. Questions so far? I'll put it here. Okay, so I know this is perhaps a little overwhelming, but we get a lot of stuff for free. So there's a lot of sample code here that's going to be helpful because we have to fill in a lot of these functions. Let me first show you that. Let me first link these things. So on our storyboard, this view controller is a collection view controller. And I want to make sure that this collection view controller that's on the storyboard is linked to this custom class that I just made, the restaurant collection view controller. So I'm going to go up here to the identity inspector and change the custom class to the restaurant collection view. So this is essential. This is like maybe a step that's easy to forget. This is the thing that links the two. It says that the code that's in restaurant collection view controller is going to be driving this thing that's on the storyboard.
What actual option did you select to make that view controller?
To make the view controller, I did
It was just
new file,
and then
source, Cocoa Touch.
look at that, that's it.
Cocoa Touch, yes.
And they should really rename some of those.
Is that confusing to you?
Yeah. That's why I keep.
Okay, so now if I come back over here, you can do Command 1 to show this sidebar. I find that that's a keyboard shortcut I use all the time because I often want to come back to this file thing. Anybody else do that? No? I think Command 2 is, it goes across here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Command 1, I know I use that a lot. All right, so back into my restaurant collection view controller. It's got a view did load, which all views have, right? It's something you do when the view initially is loaded. It's got this, what happens if you get a memory warning? Do you need to delete some resources to free up some space? We're going to ignore that. There's a segue. We've seen this before as well. We're going to ignore that for now. This is what I want you to see. A UI collection view controller, it is already coded so that it implements at least 2 protocols, maybe more. If you want to see it, you can command click on this and you'll jump to the class definition for a UI collection view controller. And this is like Apple's source code. You follow me? So this shows us that this UI collection view controller, we know what's going on, but you can't tell it from just the syntax. It actually inherits, it's a subclass of UIViewController, and it implements the UICollectionViewDelegate, the UIScrollViewDelegate, and the UICollectionViewDataSource protocols. Remember, a protocol is just kind of a set of methods that you promise to implement, kind of like an interface in Java or C#. So when you implement the UICollectionViewDelegate, there's a few methods that you have to implement. Sometimes protocols have optional methods that you may implement. So if we want to see that, we could just command click on it and we'll jump to its definition. You could also learn this stuff by doing searches online. If you like to just stick into the source code, you can learn a lot by looking at it. So this is the CollectionViewDelegate, which actually inherits from the UIScrollViewDelegate. Interesting. All right, so what you see here are the methods that may be defined by this delegate. Most of them are optional though. You see this? Should highlight item at index path. Did highlight item at index path. Bunch of stuff here. And I want to show you the ones that are most necessary. There's only about 3 that we will absolutely need. No, actually, for the delegate, we actually may not need any of them. If we want to do something when the items are selected, we have to implement one of these functions. Let me go back here. I want to show you the UICollectionViewDataSource. This is something we're going to have to implement this because this is the protocol that says this is how you get the data for this view. This powers the data for the collection view. If we click on this, you'll see here, these are some things we have to implement. We have to tell it, this function, how many items are in this section. So this is a function that returns an integer, and it takes a section number and returns, it takes a collection view and a section number and returns an int. This method is the method that actually creates a cell that will be shown. It's called for every single cell that's laid out. You see it returns something that is a UICollectionViewCell, so we'll be working on that. An optional function is we can create sections, multiple sections that contain a grid. And in this case, we could tell this, if we implement this function, we would tell it how many sections there are. Okay, those are the main things we need to do. So let me show you how we can use, how we can fill this in. So the nice thing to do is just to fill in this code that is under the UICollectionView data source. So number of sections in collection view. Let's say that we want to have, well, how many sections do you want to have? 5? Let's just have 5. Nothing wrong with 5. So we could imagine maybe these sections relate to types of restaurants. So maybe we have a hamburger section and a Italian section, if that's what you call Pizza Hut, Domino's, Mexican, right? These would be sections. Within each one of those, we're going to have a set of restaurants. This next one, you see this is the syntax here for we're overriding this function. We have the number of items in each section. So for now, let's just return a number. Let's say, it's a good number, a double-digit number. 12. First number I heard, so that means we'll have 5 sections. Every section will have 12 boxes. And then down here, this is how we configure the actual cell that's in each section programmatically. So this method, cell for item at index path, this gets called every time a layout needs to happen for a cell. So we can customize the content in every cell by putting appropriate code in here. You can see the rest of the stuff in the UICollectionViewDelegate are optional and can be commented out if you want to handle things like highlighting and selecting. You have to implement these functions that are a part of the CollectionViewDelegate. So just to make sure we can see something, go back to the storyboard, and you'll notice on the storyboard there's a little box up here, and that is the one placeholder UICollectionView cell that we were given. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just to make it a little bit more fun to deal with. Maybe 100 pixels by 100 pixels. Let's put a label on it. This is like a storyboard, so I'm going to drag a label onto here and write Taco Bell. And then I'm just going to do my normal auto layout stuff. I'm going to create some leading spacing to container margin and some trailing spacing to container margin and some top space to container margin. Should be enough.
You can command put this.
Yes. To set them all at once. Yeah, good call. So I'm just laying this out within the cell itself. So now if I run this on a 5S, what we should see is 12 times 5, 60 cells that say Taco Bell. I think that's everybody's dream come true.
Sell that to Taco Bell.
See the Apple loading is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great feature in Xcode.
Okay, we didn't do this right. Let's figure out what we did. Want to make sure that this is in fact the restaurant collection view. Yes. Oh, I think I know what we did. Okay, the thing that connects the cell to the code is this thing called a reuse identifier right here. And we don't have one listed, but in our code we said we were going to use a constant reuse identifier called cell. And when we tried to populate them down here in cell for item index path, we found one using this funky function. Yes, and this was the reuse identifier we used. What's going on here is instead of instantiating a new cell every time we lay one out, iOS, because it's theoretically on a memory constrained device, it wants to, if it can, reuse cells that are no longer visible, because those objects are the same, they're just going to have something different inside them. That makes sense? So it tries to reuse objects that already were allocated, and it's faster this way. So that's why you got to jump through this hoop of dequeuing a cell that has the same identifier, because we're expecting anything that has that same identifier has that label. It's the same kind of cell. So to me, cell is a terrible name, so let's not call it cell. Let's call it restaurant cell. And this is one of those things that it feels wrong to me because you have this special string that is essential. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels like if you make a typo, then your code breaks, like terribly, and it's difficult to tell why. So even at least they put it in a reuse identifier constant, so you only should be typing it twice, once here and once on the storyboard. It doesn't seem elegant to me. So I'm going to click on the collection view cell and go here to the attributes inspector, and I'm just going to paste in restaurant cell there. Right. It's a learning experience for all of us. So yes, as always, I didn't fix it. What am I doing wrong, guys? I just did this example in my office. It's pretty simple. So that's called restaurant cell.
You can create a custom cell since that's the dragon special label.
I did do that before. No, it should work without doing that. I wanted to show just... I'm afraid my problem is more serious than that.
Is that actually loading the collection?
Let me see. So is this... Looks like it is. That's restaurants on the tab bar.
Why would it be a black screen? Technically it should be white, shouldn't it?
That's why we're in here.
I just want to confirm I'm not seeing that. I'm not missing it somehow. I made... So if I set the collection view's background color, I'm at least seeing that. Yeah, I am seeing that.
Does your cell have any of its own constraints?
I'm pretty sure. Let me click on the collection view and then go here. See, it says this is where you set the cell size. If I want to make it 100 by 100, no header or footer, minimum spacing, section inserts.
Black sections that are like.
Do I need something that sets a height on this? I don't think so. Oops. Let me just recreate my other one. If I were to drag an image view onto here, and then make this image view fit. Well, there's nothing in that image view, so it probably won't know height. Anyway, I think I only have one image anyway, which is that, or I have two, I have first and second. Just look terrible. Got auto layout issues. Okay. Let me confirm that this is in fact a restaurant collection view controller. Yes, yes. What's this?
You spell restaurant cell right and we use Identifier.
Tyler, we learned something about this call. What was that? Do you remember this? It seemed like you did something one way, like do. You remember that? No? Okay, I don't know what I was doing wrong.
What did you do?
I commented out this function register class for cell with reuse identifier. For some reason that interferes if I'm not sure what that does, but it fixed it by taking it out, so I like that. So this looks bad, yes. What's interesting here is you see when I get scrolling, you see I have these different sections. You can tell they're sections because there's only two things here and then there's a new section. Can you see the sections? To make the sections a little bit more visible, I can go to my storyboard, click on the collection view itself, and then put in some section insets so that there's a, say, a 20-point inset on the top of each section. So that should give a little space above each section. Because before it was nothing. But this is the 20 right here. Remember before they were running into each other? So this is a little anticlimactic, perhaps. But we see here, we have something nice, which is we have this much more flexible view than stuff that we've made before, where we've got lots of items. They kind of auto layout in the sense that there's 12 of them, and
So that way you don't have to specify, like for instance, if you had a whole bunch of cards, when you're building it, you can just make one card, represent them all, and then you can deal with it with your collection view and add constraints on it you want on a page and things like that. So if you had like an Amazon with a bunch of orders, you could just do what we just did and load different data.
right, it really helps manage when you have a single kind of thing, or even a few types of things that need to be laid out in a similar way. But
the standard way that you typically do that.
this is a very common user interface pattern. If you just have a set of rows that are on top of each other, like if you're thinking like the Apple Mail program, then you don't use a collection view. Typically, you use the table view. But this is a very similar. The structure, the programmatic underpinnings are very similar. It has a data source and a delegate as well. You could imagine, for example, if you had, I don't know, like a die view, you could make the die view the cell, and then you have as many dies you wanted to right here. Boom, done. But so far, we're still missing a really important piece, which is how can we edit this information that's in the cell? Like at the very least, we'd like to change Taco Bell to be other pieces of data, other restaurants. So to do that, I need a new file. And I'm going to create a new file that is a CocoaTouch class. And this time I want it to be a subclass of a UICollectionViewCell. And I'll call it Restaurant Collection View Cell. Yeah, aptly named. So this class will will represent programmatically the structure of the things in this cell that's on the storyboard. So I'm going to go back to the storyboard. I'm going to click on my restaurant cell reuse identifier. Even though I gave it this reuse identifier, it doesn't know that it's connected to that class yet. To do that, I have to go here and give it a custom class and make it Restaurant Collection View Cell. See what I'm doing here? This is another of those important linking. Now, what I'd like to do is to go into this two circles assistant editor, and it to automatically know that I want to modify the restaurant cell, but it doesn't know that for some reason. So I'm going to come through here and choose my Restaurant Collection View Cell. That's really small. What I'm going to do is control drag from this label over here and create an outlet in the Restaurant Collection View Cell class. I want to call this outlet something like maybe title label. And I'll also create an outlet to this image view, so I could replace that placeholder image maybe with the logo for that restaurant. So this would be the logo image view. So now by doing this, whenever I create those cells, whenever I get one of those cells, I can target these properties of the cell and change them in my controller, in the Restaurant Collection View controller. So I think typically these classes are pretty small, these cell classes. Does this make sense? What questions do you have on this?
How's your Xcode blue? Is it just your own preference names?
What the? I don't remember changing it, but maybe I did a long time ago.
Everyone else is blue. I know that's kind of random. All these version changes are getting pretty
Are you using the dark theme? I know if you change the theme, it changes the.
I'm using the light theme.
All right, so we need to do a little bit more work here to change this. So I'm going to go back to the Restaurant Collection View controller. Let me get out of this. And in here, when we skipped this part kind of before, when we configure the cell, now we can actually do something because there are some interesting properties within that. Now in this case though, I need this cell to not just be what it was. Well, let's see what happens. I bet I'll get an error. If I say cell dot, I want to say title label, but there's no title label. What's going on there? The problem is I need to make sure that I DQ it as my data type, my cell type, which is a Restaurant Collection View Cell. So now the cell object should have a title label, and just to fake it for now, because we don't actually have a data set of restaurants to draw from, I'm going to say it's Taco Bell, and then the row number of whichever row we're currently displaying. The section and row, which row is basically like a cell number within the section, is embedded in this variable called index path. The index path is just the two things together, the section and the row number. So I can say index path dot row. Okay, why is this angry with me?
It should be similar type of label dot text. Shouldn't it?
Isn't that what I have?
Oh yes, you did. Sorry, I didn't have
So what we've done, we had to cast this when we dequeue with reuse identifier. We had to cast it as a restaurant collection view cell. And then we had access. So if we wanted to say cell dot, what was it, logo image view dot image equals UI image, and then say, we could give it image with a certain name, like tb.jpg. That would be assuming that we had a Taco Bell image in our project with that name. I guess we should just get that, right? Oh, look at this old school Taco Bell logo. Nice.
Honestly, the new one looks kind of old too. Don't you think?
Oh, look at that. That's a cool site.
So Taco Bell's very young.
So I'm going to save this image just for these educational purposes into our project.
Using it for professional commercial use.
It's meal grid. I'm going to go ahead and put it in this folder. Okay. Hang on. I don't really want to call it all that. I'll call it, let me just name it what I called it, tb.png. Now, in order to make this work, I really want to drag this into assets. So let me go in here and here. I'm going to drag this. Hang on. I think I can just drag it in here. It'll make a new one. Yeah. Yeah. So I've got the TB asset here, the Taco Bell logo. And I think in my view controller, I can say it has a name of TB no extension, and it'll match with the name that's in the Xcode assets. Now this is going to give the same Taco Bell logo to all of them, but it is dynamic. So if we had saved the name of each logo file in an array of restaurants, like from a data set from before, we would get that out. So typically what you're going to be doing in this function is connecting to an array or some sort of data structure that's holding all this stuff for all the different cells, and you extract out the piece that you want for the current cell that you're on, where the index path for this cell, the section row, kind of helps you map into your data set to get the right one.
You could do it two-dimensional.
You could. That was not really the iOS way, I don't think.
That's like you're still learning how to do things.
That's like the C++ way, maybe, but I think it's cleaner to have like a, I don't know, a dictionary of arrays or something. What you see here is that logo completely overlapped the name. I think that's the problem. I think the name's back there, you just can't see it. So that's probably an auto layout issue. Let's take a look at this. For one, let's get rid of the red for one. We could do that in a couple ways. One, we could come here and change the background color. Another way we could do it is in the programmatically. Give that the default background color. Let's say for this image, I'm going to control drag onto itself and give it a constant height constraint. And let me see what I gave it. Probably got whatever height it is. Height equals 57. Okay, I'll take that. You also want to notice for this logo, the mode. You probably don't want to scale to fill because now that we're constraining it, it will. It might look stretched. You probably want to aspect fit, so that it maintains the aspect ratio but fits within the size that it's the constraints that set the size. So if I did this right, then we should be able to see it'll be a smaller logo and you'll see the name. Oh, sorry, they overlap. So I know this is cheesy. It's Taco Bell. It's nacho cheesy. Oh,
They were having nacho cheese the other day.
sad day, sad day. But what we see is that you're able to change dynamically, programmatically, the value in each cell, whether it's a text thing or an image thing. Yeah? And then you do have this section structure. If we wanted to, we could put in custom views for headers or footers, which we probably would want if we were going to have a category name. We need a header view for that. The nice thing about this is that it handles a lot of this complex layout issues for you. It handles scrolling for you, the laying out for different size widths. So you don't, if you're going to have a grid-based layout, or even just anything that's generally a collection of things that are kind of all the same things but they're different, you want to use a table view or a collection view. And unlike what we did, all of this data would be connected to your data set. So for example, maybe you'd have a constant number of sections, but maybe not. If you had some data structure which had a set of restaurant types, a set of arrays that were restaurant types, and each of those arrays had a set of arrays that were the restaurants, an array of restaurants, then that outside, the number of types of restaurants that you have, the length of that data set would be this for the number of sections, and then when we have to look up the number of items in each section, we'd have to make sure, right, in the array of Mexican restaurants, how long is that array? You with me? And so you'd be returning something that's the size, the count of your data structure. So it wouldn't just be 12, it would be some variable based on the data set. So each section could have a different number. Does that make sense? This is a simple example to kind of, it's an appetizer, right? It's an appetizer for writing code that uses these kinds of collection views. But not just that, it's also useful, it's a useful example to show you how you implement protocols, how you follow this delegation pattern. Certainly the data source pattern is kind of a special version of that. One thing I want you can take note of, when you drag a UI collection view onto the storyboard, it's already set up so that the class that you've connected it to is the data source and the delegate. You can see that by right-clicking on this, and you see that this thing has a data source outlet that's connected to the restaurant's that's connected to this, right? So I think that's already like pre-set up here. The data source, it's being referred to by this collection view that's on it. So a collection view controller has a collection view on it. Does that make sense? collection view object, you can see the hierarchy here. The collection view object has a cell, which is going to get reused. These things are in the cell. And it actually also has this thing called a collection view flow layout, where you can control how those different items are laid out. You with me? So we just use this kind of standard grid, but there are lots of other more complex ways of showing that collection of items. And where we're going to be going is, I want to show you an example that I found online of how we can get this more wheel-based layout using a collection view. So all these things apply, but we're going to do a little UI magic we're going to transform the rotation of each of those items so that we get more like a circle. Any questions on this example of UI collection views?